Over 20 years ago, Arizona witnessed one of the most shocking crimes in its history. Two brothers carried out a violent bank robbery, the brutality of which led them to face the ultimate punishment, the death penalty. This case became historic, becoming one of the few instances in which both brothers were executed by the United States government. On the night of January 6, 1982, brothers Walter and Carl Lundgren spent their evening drinking and using drugs. The following morning, they decided to plan a bank robbery. It remains unclear exactly when the idea took hold, whether it was carefully considered, premeditated, or if they fully understood the level of violence they were about to unleash. What is certain is that the half-brothers had led increasingly troubled lives, accumulating a growing criminal record over the years. Walter was born in Augsburg, Germany in January 1962, while Carl was born a year later in October 1963. They were two of the three children of Emma, each fathered by a different man of distinct ethnic backgrounds. Their sister, Patricia, was the daughter of a white German soldier. Walter's father was a Puerto Rican man stationed in Germany, and Carl's father was a black soldier whose exact nationality remains unknown. Emma struggled to meet the demands of raising her young family. Walter and Carl spent 2 years in an orphanage until 1967 when their mother married Macy L.R., an African-American soldier who adopted all 3 of Emma's children. Shortly thereafter, the family moved to the United States. Life in their new country was far from happy. Macy and Emma's marriage was marked by constant arguments and repeated infidelities, and Macy subjected the children to excessive physical punishment. On top of this, the children were frequently bullied by peers because of their mixed ethnic backgrounds. In an attempt to escape this miserable life, the young boys began running away from home. These actions eventually led to their placement in institutional settings where, paradoxically, they found a life that was more stable and at times happier than the one they had at home. Carl first drew the attention of authorities at the age of 9 when he was caught stealing $969 from a store in Sierra Vista. 2 months later, he got into trouble again, this time for stealing a pair of shoes. As time went on, their criminal behavior escalated. While living on a military base in Texas, they set fire to a golf course, causing approximately $20,000 in damages. Both brothers stayed in school until the 11th grade, but dropped out at the age of 16. After briefly working as laborers, they fully committed themselves to a life of crime. In June 1980, Walter and Carl Lecrand were arrested in connection with a series of small store robberies, as well as an armed robbery in which they stole $130. At the time, Carl was still a minor and was sent to a juvenile detention center where he remained in custody until September 1981, just before his 18th birthday. Meanwhile, Walter reached a plea agreement that sent him to the Arizona State Prison in Florence, where he remained until his release, also in September 1981. Only a month later, both brothers were arrested again outside a grocery store in Tucson. They were charged with 2 counts of armed robbery, 3 counts of kidnapping, and 1 count of aggravated assault related to robberies at a Safeway supermarket on October 9th and another store on October 12th. Carl was released on bail after paying $1,100. Walter, however, was still on probation from his previous conviction, so he was taken back into custody by the Department of Corrections. His bail was set at $5,500, and unable to pay, he remained in prison. The County Corrections Volunteer Center, an agency responsible for evaluating whether certain defendants could await trial out of custody, recommended that Walter be released, stating that he did not pose a high risk. They even suggested specific conditions, including that he should not meet with his brother Carl. However, Superior Court Judge Thomas Meehan denied the request several times. In December 1981, a joint provisional release was proposed, but the Department of Corrections had placed a hold on Walter due to his probation, preventing his release until the issue was resolved. Finally, on January 5, 1982, that hold was lifted. Walter was released and almost immediately reunited with Carl. Together, they began planning their next move, seeking a quick payoff. Less than 48 hours later, on the morning of January 7, 1982, the brothers Walter and Carl Lundgren arrived at the Valley National Bank in Moriana, a small town northwest of Tucson, Arizona. The branch manager was 63-year-old Kenneth Hartsock, a well-respected and beloved figure in the community. Born in Clarksville, Ohio, Kenneth had started working at the bank in 1969 as a loan officer. After years of dedication and several promotions, he was transferred to the Moriana branch in November 1978, and by 1981, he was the official branch manager. He was married to Marjorie and had 2 adult children, Kenneth Jr. and Kathy. That morning, Kenneth arrived shortly before 8 a.m. His routine included ensuring the branch was secure and leaving a prearranged signal indicating that other employees could enter safely, parking his car in a specific spot in the lot. Walter and Carl intercepted him and followed him back into the bank, demanding that he open the vault. Due to security measures, Kenneth could not do it alone. He held only half of the code, while the other half was assigned to the security guard, who would arrive shortly afterward. Minutes later, a young employee, 20-year-old Dawn Lopez, arrived at the bank. She had only been working there for 2 months after moving from California. As she entered, she came face to face with Carl, who brandished a gun and ordered her to sit down. Terrified, Dawn obeyed immediately. Walter spoke aloud. "If he can't open the vault, we'll kill him and leave." Kenneth tried to calm her, assuring her that the men only wanted money. They forced both of them into the manager's office, bound them with black electrical tape, and gagged them with cloths. Repeatedly, they threatened to kill them. At one point, they pressed a letter opener against Kenneth's throat. At that moment, the phone rang. Dawn was ordered to answer, while Carl listened on the other end. It was Wilmer Rogers, another employee. Wilmer had driven past the bank and noticed that Kenneth's car was not in its usual spot, raising his suspicions. From a public phone, he called, noting that the car's lights were on and asking Dawn to go outside and turn them off. He warned that if she didn't, he would assume something was wrong and call the police. Wilmer asked to speak with Kenneth, but Dawn replied that he wasn't there, even though his car was outside. That contradiction confirmed his fears. He immediately contacted the marshal's office and then called 911. Carl then ordered Dawn to turn off the car's lights, warning her that if she didn't return immediately, Kenneth would be killed. Dawn complied, and upon returning, she was tied up again. Shortly after, she heard the sounds of a struggle behind her. She assumed Kenneth was being attacked. Desperate, she broke free from the tape, binding her hands, and stood up. As she turned, she saw Walter in front of Kenneth while Carl held him by the shoulders. The 3 were violently struggling. Then they lunged at Dawn, stabbing her multiple times in the head, neck, and side until she fell to the floor. Kenneth was also lying on the ground. She heard one of the men say, "Just make sure he's dead, make sure he's dead," before both fled the scene. Despite being stabbed 14 times, Dawn managed to crawl to the phone and call 911. In agonizing pain, she pleaded for help. "Please come to the Valley National Bank quickly. Ken is dead. It hurts. It hurts so much." The operator spoke calmly, trying to soothe her while gathering all the information possible until help arrived. Emergency responders arrived minutes later and had to break down the door. Dawn was rushed to the University Hospital 16 minutes away. Kenneth, however, was already dead. He had sustained 24 wounds, most likely inflicted by the letter opener, several of which were fatal. There was no chance he could survive. Meanwhile, Wilmer had recorded the license plate of an unusual car seen in the parking lot, a 1976 dark brown Plymouth Mercury. Another witness confirmed the identification. The vehicle was quickly traced back to Walter and Carl. That same day, both brothers were arrested without resistance. They were charged with murder, attempted homicide, and attempted armed robbery. This time, bail was set at $1 million each with no possibility of release. That night, Carl was taken to the hospital after displaying extreme agitation. Just 4 hours after the charges were filed, he confessed to his involvement in the crime. However, he tried to absolve his brother, claiming that Walter had remained outside in the car while he attacked Kenneth and Dawn. This confession was later heavily criticized by Carl's attorney, who argued that it had been made while Carl was hospitalized and under the influence of a powerful sedative. Thorazine, a drug used to treat psychiatric disorders that also acts as a chemical restraint. On the other hand, law enforcement officials stated that Carl's admission was voluntary and had been made before any medication was administered. Dawn spent 3 weeks in the hospital and fortunately recovered well. It was entirely understandable that she no longer wanted to work at the Moorarana branch of the bank, so she planned to move out of the area. Later, she became a resident of Puma County and worked as a sheriff's deputy, a position she carried out with dedication, perhaps influenced by her traumatic experience. The Moorarana Police Department faced strong criticism for its handling of the case and for the slow response, which became a point of contention and was later the subject of an internal investigation just before the case went to trial. The brothers were convicted for the 1981 robberies, resulting in multiple sentences totaling 21 years in prison each. Due to numerous delays, largely caused by extensive psychiatric evaluations, the murder trial did not begin until February 1984. The prosecution presented a mountain of evidence: fingerprints inside the bank, eyewitness testimony identifying the vehicle, blood traces found in the car, and a key discovery. A month after the attack, an 11-year-old boy found a locked briefcase among some bushes. The boy carried it down the road and told a couple where he had found it. They handed it over to authorities, who confirmed that the briefcase had belonged to Kenneth. Inside were a letter opener, a blood-stained jacket, black electrical tape, a toy gun, keys with initials, a keychain belonging to Dawn, and a police scanner. It was also determined that a knife had been used to inflict some of Kenneth's wounds. A butcher knife was found at the scene. Although it could not be definitively linked to the brothers, it was identical to another one located in the apartment where they had stayed the night before the crime. The most compelling evidence came from Dawn herself, who testified calmly and confidently, shedding tears only when identifying a photograph of Kenneth lying on the office floor. The defense succeeded in excluding Carl's confession, arguing that investigators had obtained it in violation of his Miranda rights. As a result, both brothers were tried together. Walter's defense argued that he had remained outside in the car during the stabbings. Walter testified that upon returning to the bank, he heard his brother sobbing and saying, "I panicked. I didn't mean to do it." During cross-examination, Walter's attorney attempted to discredit Dawn on minor details, such as whether she was wearing her glasses or had witnessed the struggle for only a few seconds. However, on the crucial points, Dawn never wavered. It was Walter who attacked her, and both brothers were present when Kenneth was killed. Carl's attorney, on the other hand, did not give an opening statement, did not call any witnesses, and did not take the stand. Had he done so and said anything contradicting the two prior confessions, the prosecution would have had the right to introduce them to the jury. Instead, Carl's lawyer focused his closing argument solely on the principles of reasonable doubt and the presumption of innocence. After just 1 hour of deliberation, the jury found both brothers guilty of first-degree murder and first-degree attempted murder. They were also convicted of attempted armed robbery and 2 counts of kidnapping. The state announced that it would seek the death penalty. According to the prosecution, the brothers met 4 of the 7 aggravating factors the judge was required to consider. Their criminal history, the risk of death posed to Dawn, the fact that the crime was committed for financial gain, and the atrocious and cruel nature of the acts. On December 14, 1984, both were sentenced to die in the gas chamber. After numerous legal battles, the Arizona Supreme Court upheld their convictions and death sentences in January 1987. Executions were scheduled for December of that same year, but shortly before the dates, a stay of execution was granted while a new trial petition was reviewed based on subsequent legal precedent. The process continued until 1991, when they lost another appeal to the United States Supreme Court, which ruled that they had received a fair trial and appropriate sentences. In 1996, their attorneys attempted to challenge the constitutionality of both the gas chamber and lethal injection. This was due to a 1992 law in Arizona establishing lethal injection as the sole method of execution, although inmates sentenced to death prior to that year could choose either method. In 1998, it was announced that they would be executed in early 1999, as they had exhausted all appeals. Carl, 36 years old, was scheduled to die on February 24th, and Walter, 38, a week later, on March 3rd. Both had chosen the gas chamber, becoming the first inmates to do so since capital punishment was reinstated in Arizona in 1992. Walter chose this method in the hope of exposing its cruelty, aiming for a last-minute appeal on the grounds that it constituted an unusually cruel punishment. 15 years after their sentencing, their final hope came from Germany. Both remained German citizens, a country that had completely abolished the death penalty in 1987. In February 1999, German officials intervened with President Clinton, Attorney General Janet Reno, and Secretary of State Madeleine Albright, pleading for clemency. Amnesty International also filed an appeal with the International Court of Justice. Vice-Chancellor Jean-Pierre Rolland stated that this was not about guilt, but a firm opposition to the death penalty. If their sentences were commuted to life imprisonment, they will be eligible for parole after 25 years, of which they had already served 17. Kenneth Hartzog Jr., the victim's son, responded that his family believed the executions should proceed as scheduled. It's not about whether they are German citizens, he said. It's about the fact that they admitted the crime. A jury found them guilty, and they must pay with their lives. It's so they don't kill someone else's father or husband. The Clemency Board voted 3-1 to proceed with the executions. Karl was executed on February 24, 1999, ultimately by lethal injection after requesting a change in method at the last minute. This was due to his fear of the agony suffered in the gas chamber. His final words were directed at the Hartzog family and Don Lopez. "I am sorry that this has taken so long. From my heart, I am sorry for what I did. I hope that someday you will find forgiveness. I cannot imagine your loss. I did not want to hurt my family. I love them very much. I have no hatred or resentment toward anyone. God bless you." A week later, on March 3rd, Walter was executed in the gas chamber. Unlike his brother, he did not change methods, convinced that he had to show the cruelty of capital punishment. His agony lasted between 8 and 15 minutes. Witnesses say that watching him die in the gas chamber was very shocking, as he coughed and writhed before dying. His final words were, "I just want to apologize to the Hartzog family. I am very sorry. I hope you find peace. Thanks to Helen Hartzog for forgiving us. To her children and Don Lopez, I wish the same. I forgive everyone, and I hope to be forgiven in my next life." In September 1999, Germany formally filed a complaint with the World Court accusing the United States of rights violations. At a 2000 hearing, the court concluded that the U.S. had violated the Vienna Convention by failing to notify Germany of the brothers' consular rights and by not ensuring proper judicial review of their convictions. Here's another case that caught national attention. A leaked execution recording in which the inmate survived the first election